Yeah, I'm very happy with where we are right now. Obviously the injuries don't make me feel very good, and I hope that we can lick our wounds a little bit, over the break. And we need the break. We all do. Some need a little time away from each other, But that's just what the break is all about. But I am, Sean. I'm happy with where we are as a group, as a team.
What's up, guys? This is Rob Will, and you're listening to The Briefcase with Casey Holdahl.
Greetings, Blazer fans, and welcome to The Briefcase, presented by Spirit Mountain Casino. Episode 136 of The Briefcase, presented by Spirit Mountain Casino. I am your host, Casey Holdahl, and we have arrived at the 2025 NBA All-Star break. Trailblazers finished the unofficial first half of the season, having lost 3 straight, all on the road, 1 to the Timberwolves, and then 2 consecutive games versus the Nuggets in Denver. Though the second game, much better effort from your Trailblazers than the first game, which we'll talk about on this edition of The Briefcase. We'll also talk about Donovan Clingan, who's been thrust into a starting role and has done a phenomenal job of it, at least in his first game as a full-time starter. He started, I believe, 9 games before the game versus the Nuggets, 10th start of the season for Donovan, but he's going to be starting a lot more games in the second half of the season, or at least to start the second half of the season. So we'll discuss that. And we'll talk about Toumani and Scoot and Bryce at All-Star Weekend. Scoot's not going to play, but he's still going to be there nonetheless on this edition of The Briefcase, presented by Spirit Mountain Casino. Well, the Trailblazers headed into the All-Star break with a 132-121 loss to the Denver Nuggets Wednesday night in Denver. Second consecutive game versus the Nuggets. Trailblazers playing both of their games in Denver this season within 3 days. Lost the first one pretty badly. Second one, even though they lost that game by 11 points, a much better effort for the Trailblazers. They made the Nuggets play all the way to the end of that game, which, particularly when you're looking at the All-Star break, it didn't seem like the Blazers were going to win that game. I mean, they played very well, particularly in the second half. They outscored the Nuggets in the second half, actually. Just didn't do what they needed to do in the first half in order to give themselves a chance to win that game. They haven't won in Denver in, I think they were saying on the broadcast last night, at least in a regular season game, in like 16 tries. So that's like 8 seasons worth of misses in Denver. So, always a tough place to play, always a tough place to win. Were the Blazers going to win that game? They had a chance. They didn't end up winning it. I would say, you could tell by, midway through the fourth quarter, they probably weren't going to win that game, but they never stopped competing. They never gave up in that game. And again, even with the All-Star break on the horizon, that's a game where it'd be very easy to say, you get to the fourth quarter and you're like, all right, we did what we could. We're not going to win this one, and then just kind of pack it in and get ready to go on vacation. Not the case for the Trailblazers. Again, they played it through to the final buzzer. They made the Nuggets play that game for 48 minutes, which you could not have said in the first game versus the Nuggets. So that was very good to see. And again, just a good effort and a good way to go into the All-Star break. I mean, obviously, after coming off that homestand with so much success, going out on the road, losing 3 straight, not exactly unsurprising. In fact, if you were going to ask me what was going to happen after that homestand on this little 3-game road trip they have, I would have said that they were probably going to lose all 3 of those games. So not exactly surprising, but good to see at least a good effort in 2 of those 3 games. The game versus the Timberwolves, they lost, but they looked all right in it. Granted, they were playing a Timberwolves team that was missing a lot of guys. A game where if they were playing their best, I think they probably could have won that game. They were not playing their best, but they played all right. So, that one was okay. Then the game versus the Nuggets, the first game versus the Nuggets, I should say, not an especially good effort from the Trailblazers. But then the bounce back game 2 days later, a much better job. Even though the Blazers do lose that one, 132-121, as I mentioned, just a much better performance. And again, that was the kind of game that was the kind of performance for me when I talk about what you want to see, or what I want to see from this team in the second half of the season, or what just want to see from this team in general, outside of wins. I mean, wins are nice, but like that's not my biggest concern. Even my concern is like, how are these guys getting better? Are they establishing a culture? Are they doing things this season that they're going to be able to take and apply to future seasons? And that's the kind of effort that we saw versus the Nuggets. Even though they didn't win, that was the kind of game where you can look at and say like, hey, we're making progress here, guys. Like we'd like to win this game, but you can feel good about the way we went out there and performed tonight. So that's the kind of stuff I just want to see this team do in the second half of the season. They don't have to win games necessarily for me. I just want to see them put in the kind of effort they put in that game versus the Nuggets on Wednesday night going into the All-Star break. Again, even knowing that like, hey, we got vacation on the horizon, that could have been an easy one to just trick off, but they decided not to, which is a really good thing. Denver ends up shooting 51% from the field in that game. If they shot 21% from the field and won that game, then you're talking about a whole different situation the Blazers are dealing with there. But Nuggets did shoot 51% from the field and 40% from three. Both of those are a lot higher than you'd like to see, but they were both an improvement from the game before, where I think the Nuggets shot better than 60% from the field and maybe better than 50% from three. So again, if nothing else, you saw an improvement from the first game to the second game, which is what you want to see, even if you're not going to be able to get a victory. Blazers, as I mentioned, did outscore the Nuggets 58-56 in the second half, had the same number of fast break points with 18, and actually outscored the Nuggets in the paint by 2. And the first game, I believe the Nuggets scored 88 points in the paint, which is ridiculous. Blazers ended up giving 140 something points up in that game. And again, that's the kind of stuff where it's like that. It's hard to feel good about the way you performed when a team is getting that many points in the paint and is shooting that high of a percentage. A much better job, a much better effort, a much better performance in the second game versus the Nuggets, once again, even though it didn't result in a win. So, you hold them to a better percentage, you match them in fast break points, and you outscore them in the second half. Those are all good things. And I thought that Chauncey in his post game, he even said the way that they came out after the second half, he was really proud of the team. And you can always tell when Chauncey is like really feels good about the way something went. Or again, pride is one of those things you can see in Chauncey a lot, particularly for the team. And you could just tell watching that post game last night that Chauncey was very proud of the way that his team performed in the second half of that game, even though they didn't get the win because of the way that they fought, the way they competed, and the way that they, as he often mentions, didn't let go of the court. Like they did not just at any point in time say, let's just put in the bench here and we'll just ride this one out. They made them play that thing all the way to the end, which is a really good thing for the Trailblazers. One thing that did happen in that game that did not happen in the first game, Jamal Murray really made a huge difference. Jamal got tossed from that first game, and I don't know if it was because some of the trash talk that Delano Banton was engaging in that game. I don't know if it was the story that was written about Toumani and how, they were asked, Jamal Murray was asked about Toumani and was like, I don't want to talk about it. I'm too much of a competitor. I don't know if it was that or Toumani or Delano or some combination of the two. But either way, a highly motivated game for Jamal Murray. 55 points, a career high 55 points on 20 of 36 shooting from the field for Jamal Murray in 42 minutes. Though again, in 42 minutes, that's a 48-minute game. They're going into the All-Star break. Jamal Murray, an important player on their team, ends up playing 42 minutes in the game versus the Portland Trail Blazers, a team that are in 13th in the Western Conference. So, I think that tells you something. Like they needed those minutes from Jamal Murray. If he doesn't have a career night, I mean, maybe someone else has a good night and they end up winning that game either way. But, they won a game by 11 and Jamal Murray had 55 points. So, again, that just goes to show that even though the Blazers weren't able to get that one, they gave the Nuggets, I won't say all that they could handle, but most of what they could handle. So again, a reason to feel good about that one. Also, no DeAndre Ayton, no Jeremy Grant, no Robert Williams, no Scoot Henderson in that game as well. So the Blazers playing that one fairly shorthanded. DeAndre Ayton's going to be out for at least the next 4 weeks with that calf strain. And again, that's bare minimum 4 weeks. I would not at all be surprised if that went on a little bit longer than that as well. But at least at this point, DeAndre out for the next month. Jeremy Grant, I imagine he'll probably be back after the All-Star break. Same with Robert Williams. Scoot Henderson, a little bit more difficult to tell. He didn't play because of that ankle sprain. Is not competing at All-Star weekend because of that ankle sprain, which we'll talk about here in a minute. So it's a little hard to tell how serious that sprain is. We haven't really got any updates from the team about that. I'm guessing probably in the first practice or two when they get back to town before they start the second half of the season here by hosting the Los Angeles Lakers and LeBron James and Luka Doncic. At that point in time, we'll probably get a better sense of how long Scoot's going to be out for. Obviously at All-Star weekend, so probably getting some treatments and just seeing kind of where he's at while also getting some rest and relaxation. But we know at least DeAndre Ayton's going to be out for at least a month. Not sure about Scoot. Maybe Matisse Thybulle comes back after the All-Star break. We haven't really gotten an update on that one as of late either. So hopefully, again, in that first practice after they get back from the All-Star break, hopefully we'll get a little clarity about who's going to be available. But none of those players available for the game on Wednesday night. But the Trailblazers were able to manage nonetheless. 26.6 assists for Anthony Simons, 14 points for Denny, Delano, and Shaden. Shaden did not get the start. Chris Murray got the start with both Scoot Henderson and Jeremy Grant out of that game as well. So that seems like something that Chauncey Billups is sticking to his guns on that one. Shaden's coming off the bench until he decides that Shaden should be starting. So There you go. And again, if you're gonna use that as kind of the carrot thing, you gotta stick it out even when other guys get injured. So 14 points off the bench for Shaden in that one as well. 13 for Toumani Camara, who had a really great defensive night. There were multiple times in that game where Toumani got switched on to Nikola Jokic, and I mean he might have. I'm saying he got switched onto him. There were times where it seems like Jokic was Toumani's man. Like that was his responsibility. And he fought like hell in that entire game and did a great job. There was one possession where, he was fighting all 24 seconds. Blazers force a missed shot, but they can't get the offensive rebound. The ball gets back to Jokic under the rim. Toumani blocks him from the back. Just a really like one of those defensive plays where it's like that's a defensive highlight outside of just the actual block itself. Like the way that he moved through that possession and really blew up things on that possession, ending with a block. Really is the that's kind of stuff where when you're an elite defensive guy, like those are the kind of highlights where you're like, boy, that you really showed me there's something Toumani. So a really nice game for Toumani as well. 17 points, 7 rebounds for Jabari Walker. Really nice game for Jabari. And, I had mentioned that I expected Duop was going to be playing some minutes with DA out. Maybe not necessarily the case. It seems like they're going to ride with Jabari. And, I mean, he did a great job versus the Nuggets. I had to mention 17 points, 7 rebounds for Jabari playing that small ball center position. And though, I mean, at this point, too, it's like, is that even small ball? Like, I mean, obviously much smaller than Jokic, much smaller than Clingan. But, I mean, Jabari's a big body. He's not especially tall, but I mean, he's tall enough. We were 6'8", 6'9", but he's got size. So, like he does a great job out there. He's able to guard multiple positions. So I might not have been right about that. I think at this point, Jabari is probably the guy that's going to be the beneficiary of those minutes with DA out. And I'm guessing Duop will get out there from time to time. But if he didn't really get out there a whole lot versus the Nuggets, I'm not sure exactly where he fits in the rotation. And at some point in time, you also assume that maybe with this All-Star break as well, Rob Williams is going to come back and be able to play more minutes now that DA is out. Though again, that's really more just dependent on about what Rob can do and less about what they need him to do with DA out. Rob is a case where it's like Rob plays the minutes that Rob is able to play. Not necessarily. It's not like, well, we're gonna play Rob more minutes because DA is out. We don't have a choice. It's like, no, the choice there is someone else plays those minutes because we're not going to put Rob in a situation where he is going to be in danger or a worse danger of injuring himself just because someone else is out with an injury too. That don't make no sense. So that's something where they know they'll end up splitting those minutes up. So you're going to see Jabari play more minutes. You're probably going to see Rob play some more minutes. I imagine you probably see Duop from time to time, but maybe not as much as I assumed initially. But one player who is obviously going to be a beneficiary of a lot more minutes with Deandre Ayton now is Donovan Clingan, who turned in yet again one of his best performances as a pro in the second game versus the Nuggets after he set a career high in scoring with 21 points on 8 of 8 shooting in the previous game versus the Nuggets. Donovan Clingan gets to start his 10th of the season, posts 17 points on 7 of 12 shooting from the field, 20 rebounds, a career high 20 rebounds for Donovan Clingan, 10 offensive and 10 defensive. Anytime you're splitting your rebounds between offensive and defensive and you're grabbing 20 to begin with, that is a fantastic night. Offensive rebounds are, they're extra possessions. The defensive rebounds, that ends the other team's possession, but offensive rebounds creates another possession for your team, which is incredibly important, particularly when you're a team like the Trailblazers, who are, when you're playing teams with more talent, you need more possessions in order to be successful. And so a guy like Donovan Clingan, able to create more possessions with his ability to offensive rebound. So that was great as well. Also had 3 blocks and 2 assists. And maybe the most important stat for Donovan in 31 minutes. 31 minutes is a lot of minutes for Donovan to play. He's been averaging, I think, around 18, 20 minutes this season. Played 31 minutes and looked great doing it. That's going to take its toll. And he's doing it at elevation as well, playing the second consecutive game. I mean, he played more minutes in that first game versus the Nuggets as well. So to see Donovan be able to go out there and play 31 minutes and be effective in those 31 minutes, that's a great sign. Obviously seeing the stats, seeing the points, seeing the rebounds, those are great things. But again, I think maybe the most important stat for Donovan, and that is just those 31 minutes and being able to play the 31 minutes. I believe he had 5 fouls going up against a guy like Nikola Jokic at elevation. Again, that's like you combine all that together. You're playing the best center in the NBA, one of the best players in the NBA, arguably the best player in the NBA at their house, which is at Mile High. Your guy's been coming off the bench. You're going to start now. You're playing 31 minutes. and you got thumped in the game before, so you definitely don't want to come out and get punked again. And so for Donovan to be able to have the performance that he had in that game, in those minutes at elevation versus a guy like Nikola Jokic is again that's really impressive. That's exactly what you wanted to see out of Donovan Clingan in that situation. And I know a lot of people have wanted to see Donovan play more minutes, and I think the team has really gone out of their way to kind of try to be careful in the way that he's getting minutes. You don't want him to get injured, and you don't also want to hurt his confidence by throwing too much at him before he's ready. Though I don't really know that Donovan's really that kind of guy. Like he's not the kind of player. He's not the kind of personality that's going to get his confidence shaken by other players having good nights against him. I mean, he's smart enough to know that that's going to happen from time to time, particularly as a big man in the NBA. So I wouldn't expect that to be a problem. But you also, again, there's also just a notion that you don't want to hurt players' confidence by putting them in situations that they're just not necessarily prepared for. And so after, coming off the bench for the first half of the season, at least for the next 3 weeks, assuming he's able to stay healthy, you're going to see Donovan Clingan in the starting lineup, probably playing around 28 to 30 minutes a night. And, for people that wanted to see him play more, for people who wanted to see kind of what he can do this season going into next season, for people that feel like, the best way for young players to get better is just to play a lot of minutes, that's a really good thing for Donovan and for people who view that to be a good way to develop. And I mean, heck, in that first game, he showed that, hey, if you give me more minutes, I can do something with him. So I think that's a really good sign. And again, if there are a lot of good positives to take away from that second Nuggets game, and I think the way that Donovan played is probably the most positive part of it, and not just the way he played, but the way that he was able to play all those minutes while not being so fatigued that he couldn't play. I mean, he did have to ask out a couple times. I think Christian Braun kind of caught him in the gut at one point in time, and he got called for the foul. And he's waiting to rebound. He kind of asked for a sub, and you could tell like he was struggling a bit, but it's because he got hit in the gut basically when he wasn't expecting it. Still got out there and finished off the game, and again played 31 tough minutes against a guy like Nikola Jokic. Who is a incredibly difficult matchup for anyone, let alone a 20-year-old rookie. So nice night for Donovan Clingan, and hopefully a sign of things to come for him for the rest of the season as well, or at least particularly as Deandre Ayton is going to be out here for at least the next month. You imagine that is probably if you get anything close to what you got versus the Nuggets from Donovan Clingan over the next month while Deandre Ayton is out. I mean, I already felt really good about that pick anyways, but I think you really start to feel good about Donovan's ability to be your long-term center for the foreseeable future for the Trailblazers, which again, I think they already feel pretty good about that anyways. They have a great center rotation. But they brought him in to be a rim protecting guy who they could depend on for I think years and years and years, and he's shown at least in that game versus the Nuggets, or at least both those games versus the Nuggets, that he is up to that task. 20 minutes for Donovan Clingan is, I believe, he makes him the sixth rookie, I believe, in Trailblazers history that's had that many rebounds in a game. He is also, him and Wemby, Donovan Clingan and Victor Wembanyama are the only two rookies in the last 10 years to put up at least 15 points, at least 20 rebounds, and have at least 3 blocks in a game. So, anytime you can get it in a stat with Wemby, that's a good thing. He did something that Arvydas had. Sabonis was the last player to do in the last game versus the Nuggets. So again, a guy who's going out there and doing the things you would like to see from a young center, staying out of foul trouble, able to play extended minutes, able to push through some fatigue in order to still be successful, doing a great job crashing the glass, blocking shots, and really defending the rim. So I think all told, really good things you saw from Donovan Clingan, and things hopefully will be seen from Donovan Clingan going forward, at least as long as Deandre Ayton is out for the next month. All right, real quick here, since it is the All-Star break, thought it would make some sense to just kind of recap really fast where the Trailblazers are at as we go into the unofficial second half of the season. Trailblazers at 23-32 are 13th in the Western Conference. They're 1.5 games back from the Spurs in 12th, and they're 9 games up on the Jazz in 14th. They're 22nd in the NBA standings league-wide, which goes to show just how many bad teams there are in the Eastern Conference. I'm assuming that all those teams didn't set out the season assuming they would be as bad as they've been. But now they've just decided to really lean into it. So, the teams outside of like the top 5 in the East are not great. So that race to the bottom is It has already started, and a lot of Eastern Conference teams down there. So we'll see how that goes in the second half of the season. Trailblazers are now 8-19 on the road and 15-13 at Moda Center this season. They have 14 remaining road games, and 12 of those games are on two trips. So basically, at this point in time, the Trailblazers, I think, have four remaining road trips, two 6-game trips, and two 1-game trips, which, for about 2 months of it, yeah, I guess about 1.5, 2 months of the season. So I guess that's really not that odd. But to have all of those trips, to still have two 6-game trips remaining after the All-Star break is it's a little bit different. So and the first one of those trips being at the end of February as well. So yeah, so that's going to be interesting too. A lot of those teams in the Eastern Conference, as I just got done saying, a lot of those teams don't really seem to be trying. So we'll kind of see how that goes. But yeah, plenty of road games left to play, and two of those coming on two trips, or at least most of those, I should say, coming on two trips. Blazers also have 13 home games remaining. Tickets still available. Head over to trailblazers.com. Check out some games at Moda Center in the second half of the season, particularly if you want to see some young guys, because I'm guessing particularly with Donovan Clingan, if nothing else, you're going to see a lot of Donovan Clingan minutes here over the next month, and perhaps even longer than that. Blazers do host, as I mentioned, Luka and LeBron and the Lakers in their first game back from the All-Star break. Then they host the Hornets before heading out for the first of those 2-week trips. Also interesting too, we're going to New York twice. The last couple of years, usually they clump those New York trips together. This time they're broken up into two. So we'll play the Knicks on one trip and the Nets on another trip, which, it's one on hand, it's nice to have like a long extended stay in New York. But on the other hand too, it's nice to kind of come back and forth to New York. It's always a good stop. Blazers have lost 3 straight, as I already mentioned, but are 10-5 in their last 15 games. Again, they've looked much improved since the calendar turned to 2025. With these injury issues they're encountering now, we'll see if they're able to keep that up. But either way, it'll be a good chance to see some of the younger players, which I know a lot of you have wanted to see anyways. So regardless of what you're hoping to see in the second half of the season, I think you're probably going to be able to see it. If you want to see young guys play, you're going to see that. If you want to see wins, they're going to be trying. So yeah, I think it's should make for an interesting second half of the season. As for where they stand in terms of their offensive and defensive ratings, Trailblazers are 24th in both offensive rating and defensive rating and net rating. Blazers offensive rating 110.2 points scored per 100 possession. Their defensive rating is 115.6 points allowed per 100 possessions, and their net rating is a minus 5.4. So as of right now, 24th in all of those metrics, and they're about 24th in the league right now, which makes some sense. There's definitely kind of two, I guess 2.5, 3 kind of races in the NBA. Obviously, you got the teams at the top. You got kind of the teams in the middle. I don't even know if you could say there's a whole lot of teams in the middle, to be perfectly frank. And then you got a whole lot of teams that are heading towards the bottom. So the second half of the season is going to be exciting in terms of the teams at the top, and probably a bit of a slog towards teams at the bottom, because I think we've seen a lot of the players that are coming out of this draft. I think there's quite a few teams that have already decided that is where their attention is at right now. And unfortunately, I think some of the games are going to look like that in the second half of the season. So, you got to do what you got to do. So we'll see that. But yeah, should be an interesting second half of the season for the Trailblazers. A lot of different directions to go. A lot of room for growth still to be made. And, if they're able to play the same way defensively, in the second half of the season as they've played, since the beginning of January, then win or lose, I think you really feel good about the things the Blazers are doing on the court. If they kind of revert back to the way they were playing in November, December, then I think it's a little bit more difficult to really feel like you're making progress and feel like you're getting anything really accomplished. But I'm optimistic. I think that they are going to continue to play the way they have as of late. It really does seem like Chauncey's pushing the right buttons and has gotten these guys to really realize some things in terms of kind of the effort and preparation they need to bring on a night-to-night basis. And that seems to be paying dividends for this team, even if it's not always coming off in wins. They're playing much better basketball. As we can see, their offensive defensive rating, they've generally been, I think, 28th or 29th this season in both those ratings. So the fact they're moving up is a good thing. And I think, part of that is the way that they're playing as of late. Part of that is that, as I mentioned, some teams, have already started to go a different direction this offseason or this season. So we'll see how that goes. But either way, hopefully the Trailblazers are able to carry over what they've been doing since the start of 2025 into the last 2.5 months of the season, or last 2 months of the season after we get done with the All-Star break. Well, now that we're in the All-Star break, players tend to scatter pretty fast. I don't even think many players actually even probably took the flight back from Portland to Denver. Probably headed out on vacation, maybe on the beach somewhere. And if you're considering getting out to a beach, consider going to Spirit Mountain Casino on Highway 18 in Grand Ronde, where you can experience the ultimate dining experience at the Spirit Mountain Casino Seafood Fest, a culinary experience that will tantalize your taste buds and leave you craving more. Held every Friday and Saturday from 3:30 to 9 p.m., Spirit Mountain Seafood Fest is the perfect way to start your weekend with a bang. Whether you're a seafood lover, a meat enthusiast, or just someone who appreciates a good meal, their Surf and Turf Buffet offers something for everybody. You can enjoy all-you-can-eat seafood goodness for just $65 per person, 13 years and older, $40 per person, 2 to 12, and kids under 2 eat free. As I mentioned on a recent episode, I asked if 2-year-olds can put away anything at the buffet. I heard from multiple people saying that their 2-year-olds can actually go to town on a seafood buffet. So shout out to you kids out there. Shout out to your folks too, belling you up to the buffet table at Spirit Mountain Casino, just telling you to go wild, eat as much as you possibly can as a 2-year under, because you're eating for free. But no matter your age, no matter your preference, there's always something for you to love at Spirit Mountain Casino. Spirit Mountain Casino on Highway 18 in Grand Ronde. Seafood Fest every Friday and Saturday. Check it out. Spirit Mountain Casino, elevate your game. And while we are now in the All-Star break, it's not a break for everybody. I mean, it's mostly a break. But Toumani Camara, Scoot Henderson, and Bryce McGowens all heading to San Francisco for All-Star Weekend to take part in the Rising Stars Challenge, the Castrol Rising Stars Challenge. Though Scoot Henderson not playing in that because of that rolled ankle, he is still heading to San Francisco. He'll go through the media circuit, so you'll see some stuff from Scoot at All-Star Weekend. But it's just going to be Toumani and Bryce playing in the Rising Stars Challenge, and they're actually going to end up playing each other in the first game at the Rising Stars Challenge. Toumani on Team Mitch Richmond. Once again, incredibly difficult to say. Bryce McGowens on the G League team, which I believe is being coached by Jeremy Lin. I don't know if they're calling it Team Jeremy Lin or not, but actually doesn't really matter. Either way, they're playing in the second game. So there'll be the first game, and then Toumani's team, Team Mitch Richmond, as I mentioned, will be playing Bryce McGowan's team, the G Leaguers. The winner of that team game will go on to play the winner of the game between Chris Mullins and Tim Hardaway's team. And then the winner of that game will go on to play on All-Star Sunday night versus the actual NBA All-Stars. They're in 3 different teams. And the winner of the Rising Stars Challenge team will play Shaq's OGs, which is a team that includes Damian Lillard, LeBron James, Steph Curry, and Kevin Durant. So if Toumani's team, Mitch Richmond, or if Bryce McGowan's G League team ends up advancing, they'll end up playing Damian Lillard and the rest of the All-Stars on Shaq's team on All-Star Sunday night, which it seems to me if the first and second year guys end up doing that, that's kind of a fun story. If the G League guys end up doing that, I don't know how fun of a story that is. It feels to me like the NBA has gone just a little bit too overboard with the inclusion of the G League in All-Star Weekend. I love the G League. You guys are great, but it feels like it's just a little too much. Particularly when, like I'm guessing there is some NBA first and second year guys who would like to be at All-Star Weekend who don't get to go, but they're doing that for a lot of G League guys, which again, I just don't, is that really the point of the G League? Well, it's about development more than anything else, but either way, I'm glad that Bryce is going to be there. But I really hope that Toumani's team is the one that ends up advancing. So that starts on Friday night at 6 p.m. Again, Toumani's game is the second one. So even if you're not there at 6 o'clock, if you're not in front of a television at 6 o'clock on Valentine's Day, which is Friday, you should probably make sure that you're squared away relationship-wise first before sitting down to enjoy the Castrol Rookie Sophomore Challenge or Rising Stars Challenge. Just don't get yourself in trouble, folks. But yeah, so Toumani will be in that game, and hopefully they'll win that one. They're doing elim endings for that one as well. So so again, I'm even calling them semifinals is stupid. It's not a semifinal when there's just 3 games. They're not quarterfinals, they're not semifinals. It's just a 3-game tournament. So the first 2 games, the initial games will be to 40 points. The final game will be to 25 points, which seems backwards to me, but whatever. So yeah, so that's happening on Friday. Check out Toumani Camara in that one on Team Mitch Richmond. Check out Bryce McGowens on the G League team as well. 6 o'clock start time on, I don't know, it's on some station. I'm sure it will not be difficult to find. But yeah, that will be what you will see out of the Trailblazers at All-Star Weekend. I'm sure that, we got some people that are covering as well, so you'll probably see some behind the scenes stuff as well on our social accounts, which is cool stuff too. And I'm just glad that Toumani's getting the opportunity to be a part of that. They had talked to him about it in Denver, and he was like, hey, you only have 2 years in order to be involved in this stuff, and I didn't get to do it my first year, so I'm glad I get to do it my second year. So really glad Toumani's going to be there. Kind of thought if there was another injury replacement that maybe Donovan Clingan might get an invitation, but didn't seem. I don't know if there has been any more injuries or if they're just not even worried about it at this point. I'm guessing that Donovan probably doesn't mind having the time off anyways. And I would imagine too that you will probably see him there next season. But yeah, so if you want to check out All-Star Weekend and you want to see the Trailblazers compete in it, you can at least see them Friday starting at 6 o'clock, and there's a potential you can see them on Sunday at the actual All-Star Game, which is now a collection of games. It's not actually an All-Star Game, which again makes it very difficult to talk about. I actually think it's a decent idea. They might as well try something different, but it's hard to explain it because it's not an All-Star Game now. It's All-Star multiple games. Tell me what the nomenclature is, NBA. Tell me what I'm supposed to say, and I'll say it. Because is it the All-Star Games? Is it just All-Star Sunday night? Is it the rookies? Well, I guess let's just call it a challenge then, because the Rising Stars challenge, that can mean anything. Like it can be multiple games, it can be one game. Maybe let's just call it the All-Star Challenge now, and that happens to happen on Sunday nights. Saturday night is the 3-point dunk skills challenge, but Blazers don't have anyone competing in that. Not to say you shouldn't watch it, but there's no Trailblazer angle in that one. And that's going to do it for this edition of The Briefcase. Thank you so much for joining me. As always, I'm going to enjoy a little time off for the All-Star break as well, then get right back to it in the unofficial second half of the season. Plenty still yet to accomplish, plenty still yet to do for the Trailblazers. A lot of improvements still yet to be made. Maybe they'll win some games here and there and hopefully get some guys some minutes who need it. And again, really use the second half of the season to kind of flesh out what they're going to do next season and figure out what they have and what they might still need to address in the offseason, as they embark on kind of rebuilding this team and getting it back to where they want it to go. It's a multi-year process. And, the second half of this season, I think, is an important time for this team because you obviously still got a lot of young players on the team who are going to play minutes. Obviously, you got one eye on the draft this year and kind of seeing where the Blazers are going to end up in terms of the lottery. So it should be an interesting second half of the NBA season, which we will talk about in a little bit. So for myself, thank you so much for joining me on this edition of The Briefcase presented by Spirit Mountain Casino. I'll talk to you next week. Go Blazers.